All right, I'm going to welcome everyone. My name is Mike Peterson. If you can't hear me, please raise your hand. I'm talking through the mask. I want to welcome you to the city of Cottonwood Heights. It's Tuesday, September 21st. It's just after 7 p.m. This is our business meeting for the second half of the month. I want to excuse Councilmember Tally Bruce, who is ill this evening and will not be with us. Also want to recognize County Councilwoman Ann Granado. Raise your hand, Ann, so people know where you are, who's visiting us tonight as well to see how we conduct our business. And with that being said, we'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'd like to ask Councilmember Peterson if you would lead us in that pledge. Thank you, Councilman Peterson. Tonight we have two opportunities for public comment. The first on the agenda is just citizen comments, and the citizen comments is not regarding the open space. That is the next item on the agenda, and I assume the majority of you are here for that item, which we appreciate. So we will first begin with citizen comments on things other than the open space master plan. And hopefully that does not go as long. We'll get right to that next item.
Mayor, may I just clarify that includes the trail components of the open space master plan? Yep.
Yes, not this item, but the next item, which is the public comment, is on the open space master plan. It refers to the trail proposed thing, which I think most of you are here regarding, and most of you have written me an email, and I appreciate those. So I'm going to call out the names anyway, and if you'd like to make comment just in general on citizen comments, please come up. If not, tell me it's regarding the open space or the trail, and we'll move to that. Dan Martinez. Okay. Dave, I think you're here for the trail. Where's Dave Barry? Yep. Barbara Olson. Steve Olson. John Clausen. Tom Bowen. Good to see you back, Tom. Margot Richards. Victor Ketchum. Julie Clausen. Tim. Well, I got to tell you what he wrote. Tim must be Jamaican because Jamaicans are crazy. Halbeck. Ah.
I have trail comments on also, but I'll be quick because you have so many people talking here tonight. First thing on the refinancing, if we have $75,000 or $80,000 laying around, let's just play down the bond instead of refinancing the bond. Especially the 2016 one. We're this close to paying that thing off. So let's do that instead of giving Zion's Bank. Not that I don't like Zion's Bank, but instead of giving them money. I'm a big thumbs up on the increase in police pay for the whole spectrum. I think that'll put us in the tops piece. All the other cities are doing the same thing. So we're probably at the end of this year, even if we pass the increases that we're talking about, we probably won't be at the very top anymore, but we'll be in a good range. On the COVID thing, I did want to add one thing to what I'd said last week. This is a UVC light bulb. If you want to get rid of COVID, you put these all over your high schools, your junior highs, that kind of thing. People can do their hands, people can do their face, whatever. These things in less than 1 second will kill all the COVID in a particular room. And these cost less than $2. So if you want to invest in how do we defeat this COVID thing, I would say UVC lights are the way to go. And so that's it.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate your attendance as always. Scott Clark. Mark Lundquist. Thank you. Mark McDonald. Kurt Hawes. Okay. Anyone else who'd like to speak on something other than the trail open space? Okay, you want to speak twice? Okay, come on up.
Are we talking about the ADUs tonight?
Yes,
Maybe you could explain that to them before I speak
we will.
on ADUs.
What we'll do when it comes up on the agenda, I'll have it introduced by Mike Johnson. He'll give a quick summary. Yes,
Thank you.
we will definitely do that.
Mayor, but there is no public comment on that. We had that last time. So
But I think when it's introduced, we'll have Mike Johnson explain what it is just for the audience. We do anyway. Yeah, we took public comment on that last time. And it's a state mandate that we have to do it. So we'll explain that and where we've taken our best shot at improving on that state mandate. All right. Any other comments unrelated to the open space and trail? Hearing none, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is public comment. And we'll go back through the list again. And this is where you can provide comments regarding our open space master plan and any aspect within that plan that you would like to comment on. But before you do that, I'd ask you to please listen carefully to Mike Johnson, our planning director, who will give us a brief introduction and to be frank with you, some proposed modifications because of your input to this point.
Thank you, Mayor.
You may want to look to the monitors on either side.
Yeah, thank you. This will kind of guide the introduction I have for this. So before I get into the proposed changes that I think will be of great interest to those in attendance tonight, I did want to give a quick overview of the purpose and intention of the full plan. A lot of the comments we received were labeled as a trail master plan comment. This is a little broader in scope than that. Let me see if we can. So the city has been working for a number of years in various states of completion on a parks, trails, and open space master plan. And the real purpose of this plan, this has been a council priority for the past probably 4 years, is that it will serve as an addendum or a supplement to the city's general plan, which is a very long range document that guides future policy and decision making at the city. But this is one specific to parks, trails, and open spaces throughout the city. It's intended to provide a long range and broad vision that provide recommendations for future budget, policy, and land use decisions, again, related to parks, trails, and open space citywide. It does not approve any specific projects, construction, development, or anything like that. For any new parks, trails, or open space preservation, those projects would come after a master plan is in place, subject to budget allocation, additional discussion, design, public input, et cetera. This is a quick update from the last time we discussed this plan with the council. We have added an acknowledgement of private property rights, and I will read through this because this was the subject of a lot of comments we received. In Utah, cities cannot use eminent domain for parks, trails, and open spaces. Cottonwood Heights absolutely respects private property rights, and that's fundamental to anyone living in the city. And eminent domain has never been an applicable tool or an intended tool identified in this plan or any other plan to implement any parks, trails, and open space recommendations. Any plan element that is represented that impacts or affects private property would only be able to be realized through a typical real estate transaction with a willing buyer and a willing seller, or during a time where substantial redevelopment of a property is underway, say a multi-lot subdivision, a rezone, a commercial development, something like that, where if there were a anticipated trail or park or open space on a map, then the city could require some of that to be set aside by the developer. And by substantial development, I'm not talking about home additions or remodels or add-ons or anything like that. This would be much more substantial in scope that substantially change an area that we see happen in the city in different areas from time to time. The plan envisions, and this should say, parks, trails, and open space development that is of mutual benefit to trail users, adjacent landowners, and easement holders and residents. And again, trail access would only ever be required in a manner that respects the rights of private property owners and individual perspectives on the best use of land. The plan is not a detailed plan of trail alignment. It's not an acquisition or construction plan. Much more detailed site-specific planning, analysis, design, public input, budget discussions, et cetera, would be absolutely necessary after a master plan is in place before any work proceeds on any of the recommendations in the plan. The other kind of unrelated references we will be adding a reference to national park standards to validate some of the other recommendations we're making elsewhere in the plan. That's less related to trails and more related to the parks recommendations. But again, I want to be absolutely clear that eminent domain is not an option here and not a tool and is not recommended by the city. It's a very, very long range plan in some instances that envisions potential improvements years and generations down the line when areas age and start to redevelop, that we can accomplish some of the recommendations in this plan at that time. I'll now focus on the trails chapter of the plan because that's what I think all of the public comments were about. The purpose of the trails chapter is to establish an interconnected recreational trail network, but also an active transportation network of trails that connects sidewalks, neighborhoods, pedestrian connections. Basically, we want trail interconnectivity throughout the city, whether those trails are used for recreation or to get around to visit different destinations. We want a citywide trail system, at least we envision a citywide trail system in this plan, that seeks to achieve that interconnectivity. And we also want to establish potential interconnectivity between cities. Now, we can't identify a trail in another city on this plan and have any authority over that. But we do show a few trail alignments that could potentially run through other cities. Again, we have no authority over those. The other purpose is we'd like to provide access to public lands for city residents and non-city resident users without interfering with the quality of life of nearby residents. So I will now focus on the Little Cottonwood Canyon Trail and the Little Cottonwood Canyon Hillside Trail as they're labeled on the plan. I'll give a quick summary of the original purpose of this trail in the plan and then propose an alternative that we will be proceeding before this comes back for council action. This was originally included in the plan as a creekside trail that would follow the Little Cottonwood Creek from the canyon all the way throughout the city. Creekside trail amenities are often popular and well used. Obviously, there are substantial concerns with this one, but that is the original vision, and that's the alignment here. At least the Cottonwood Trail alignment follows pretty exactly the creek on a map. These were presented as two potential options. There was not an intention to pursue both of them, but one that followed the creek more directly and one that followed the hillside above the creek instead. That being said, we are very clearly understand after this most recent round of public comments that there's major concerns. We are very aware that the creek itself is in many private properties and backyards, and that's raised a lot of concern. We had envisioned this originally as a 100-year plan, as something to work towards over time as areas redevelop. That being said, the public comment was such that we have worked as staff to propose an alternative that we feel resolves many of the issues we've heard in the public comments. And we presented this to the council in the work session, and again, with the council's direction, we'll be moving forward in making this change to the plan before it comes back for final adoption. So I'll show the existing trail here. The green line is the subject of most of the public comments we received. I should say both of the green lines on the lower portion of the city there, labeled as Little Cottonwood Trail and Little Cottonwood Creek Hillside Trail. We have proposed to remove that future trail recommendation from the map and in its place, propose an urban trail instead along existing city roads or public rights of way, primarily being Danish Road up to Creek Road, and then Creek all the way to the west boundary of the city, and then one along Siesta Drive in the public right of way that would allow for a connection into Crestwood, which is an ideal location to connect up above to Park Ridge Drive. So it helps us accomplish that circulation and trail connectivity, but rather than affect hundreds of private properties, it is within the city right of way. And again, the city's approach to this would be something that it works towards over time as areas redevelop, as the city receives funds to improve existing sidewalks and enhance them into trails. But the purpose of the provision or of the amendment would be to remove the Little Cottonwood Trail and the Little Cottonwood Hillside Trail, replace it with an urban trail along Danish and Creek Road. The beginning of this trail would run through the new development on the south end of the city, but there is a trail easement on that hillside already. So that was required when that development was entitled. So we feel that this alternative, it eliminates the Creekside Trail as a potential amenity. However, when looking at the goals of the plan that are focused around interconnectivity, it essentially creates a network throughout the city that proposes trails and pathways along the major north-south and east-west corridors throughout the city that would provide a recreational opportunity, but also a really good trail network that people could use those main roads safely to travel on trails and get throughout the city where they need to go. So again, that is the intent, staff's intent tonight, and our recommendation would be to move forward with this proposed change. If the council agrees, which I think you do based on the work session, we'll amend that draft plan that's posted on the city website later this week and update it again to remove any reference to that Little Cottonwood Trail or the Hillside Trail.
But Mike, added clarification to that with these changes and comments from the council, it will also go back to our Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee for a quick review, as well as the Planning Commission for a quick review. Correct?
Yeah, so what we would plan to do, because both of those bodies in public meetings recommended approval of this plan. The plan's been published online. I understand many people just recently had the opportunity to see it and review it. And that's why we have multiple steps and multiple opportunities for public comment. But the commission did not have this information last time they made a recommendation, and neither did the Open Space Committee. So the plan would be the council has directed us to make these changes and just present that for an update so they're aware of it. If they have major concerns with it, then they could potentially take new public comment and vote on it again. Otherwise, we would just proceed as directed here. Any other questions before we?
No, and again, the point is, after that communication back with those committees, we are not voting on anything tonight. This vote would come to the council after that review and it'd come back to us in the next month or two.
Yeah, and again, the plan would be that these changes are implemented when this is back in front of the council for any final decision.
Okay.
So be a public hearing. The Planning Commission would have been the body that would have heard the first batch of public
Yeah,
comment on this particular plan. Is
From
that
about
correct?
February to March or April, this was open for public comment at the Planning Commission. We didn't receive near this amount of feedback then, but we are now. So yeah, they're the formal public hearing body, but the council can also do that.
Mike, I want to thank you. This has obviously been a very hot topic, and I think the recommendation to change that to existing areas rather than trying to have 100 or 150 year plan, I think this is something that can happen in our lifetime. And I know that we do want to try to get people, I just don't want them to go to Crestwood Park because that's my park. I'm joking. No, but it is a good plan, and it's good. I think the planning will see the wisdom in this because it wasn't really a good viable option. I know there was a creek. I know it was on a map, but I don't think they realized what they were trying to accomplish. But thank you.
And that's why we have a process. So the process is working.
And just one more clarification, the trail itself, the urban trail or the path, that would be designed at a later phase to fit the context of where it is. But the idea would be it's more than just a sidewalk, but the exact dimensions or material or finish or fencing and privacy concerns, things like that, they would all be vetted and worked out and designed before implementing anything. But again, the main goal is to move this off the private properties and onto the public rights of way.
All right, thank you, Mike. Appreciate that introduction. And now we will take public comment on the open space master plan, or specifically, if you'd like, regarding the trail components.
Mayor,
Please,
Ma-
go ahead.
a couple of things related to the public comment. I just want to acknowledge that all of the emails that were sent in by all of the individuals, they were compiled and forwarded to the city council. So they have seen all of the emails that came in, both to staff, to myself as city manager and others. We also received this petition that the council will receive copies of with the names on this. So I wanted to make sure all of you are aware that that has been forwarded to the council. And in addition, there was another person that raised their hand on the Zoom meeting that I'm not sure if they wanted to comment on this or before. The name was Troy Ripplinger. I just wanted to bring that up, Mayor, if you want to start maybe with that person, and then we can go into the comment.
Right, Troy, are you listening? If so, raise your hand again.
Okay, dropped off.
We need to reach out to him if we can. I'm still halfway between Zoom meetings and public meetings, so. On this issue.
Yeah,
All right,
there is.
just don't let me get to the end, but let's go through what I have here. We have a lot of people, then we'll recognize those people with Dale Harris and Jeremy Roberts, but we'll get to those in a moment. Let's start with Kurt Haas. Kurt, come on up.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Johnson may have just taken my thunder, but I did want to just express some appreciation. I sent an email earlier today to Mr. Johnson, and within less than 10 minutes got a response back. So I just wanted to commend him on not only his responsiveness, but his responsiveness to the community. What it appears to be that he's taken all the comments and emails into account. And usually you think of a government as a very slow moving, slow to react institution, but appreciate and commend Cottonwood Heights for reacting quickly to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark McDonald.
I just got caught a little off guard about this just a few days ago. And anyway, I'm glad to see that the council's considering changes to this trail initiative. I guess my concern is a little bit is that we don't have a lot of people with very much common sense. I mean, why would you put this trail in, if it's a 150-year plan? When did the 150-year plan start? Does it start today? Or does it start, did it start 100 years ago or 50 years ago? I know they want to put in this silly walking system up in Sugar House. I was on the Sugar House Chamber of Commerce. I remember them talking about this and that, and we'll plan this and we'll plan that. Have you gone down to Sugar House lately? Seen where my old property was, and there's probably 10 or 15,000 apartments down there. Well, they should have said, if they wanted a walking facility, they should have set aside the property to have that walking facility. Like Highland Drive, they've set the property aside for Highland Drive, so all of us know that eventually Highland Drive is going to go through there. But it just seems to me like, why are we spending this kind of money on this silly type project? It seems like we got people that are have drug problems, homeless problems. I think we've got a lot more concerns in our communities going forward, even if it's 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, about getting off this trail type system and start thinking a little bit more about people's personal values. Get the crap off the phones, get the crap off the internet, be concerned about families. Look at the money that you're spending on this silly type project that could go to constructive things in our community. Finally, it looks like somebody finally come up with some common sense, and hopefully we can do better planning in the future. So if there's a future community out in who knows where, then get the plan together. You don't build a house without a kitchen. Okay, so then you don't build a community without walking areas. But don't try to come back in after everything's been developed. And to me, it's just typically the way the society is going. It's like, let's be concerned with this la-di-da and not be concerned with each other.
Thank you, Mark. And that's why we have this process. Mark Lundquist.
I think the positive remarks have been made, and I'm grateful that the city has looked into this with an understanding that private property is important to us. And I know that I just purchased just a few years ago, and I bought only for the purpose that it was a beautiful trail or a beautiful river that kind of went through, or a creek that went through our backyard, and we don't have much property there to put a trail in. Otherwise, it would be right onto our deck. So I just want to say thank you for making the changes and the alternate adjustments. So thank you.
No, thank you. And it became quite apparent to us with the outpouring of communications of a need to revisit this, and that's why we've done it. Even though trails are fundamental in today's planning, we're a new city, and we inherited one that was pretty much built out. So we're trying to adapt and as much open space as we can and appropriate trail systems where we can. And so this is part of that process. Scott Clark.
I just heard they take it all back, and we're not going to do what we came here to protest. I must say, however, if we're going to have an urban trail, you better have a sidewalk on Creek Road, because Creek Road is very dangerous and there's nowhere to walk. The street lights go out intermittently on Creek Road, and I assume that that is a concern of the city of Cottonwood Heights. I want to observe that even if we're not going to build a trail, which I'm relieved, because I was going to put up no trespassing signs on my backyard, and I may still do that. I think we've gone backwards. The Salt Lake County several years ago did a study on the creek and said that that portion of the creek that is from Danish Road down to Fort Union is the stability of the bank goes from poor to fair. One of the reasons is because we permitted people to cut down all of the natural vegetation which holds it together. The city of Salt Lake just, I think, recently enacted a non-disturbance ordinance that said you shall not build or disturb the banks of the creeks. Of course, they're different creeks within 25 feet of the high water mark. What I'm saying is, all of these things, we're going backwards, and we are looking to something that we can't do when we should be looking to what we can and should do to improve. Now, before I say do as I say and not as I do, I'm from Royal Lane. We have a covenant there that says you shall not remove any of the natural vegetation within the flood control ordinance, which is 15 feet. Now, I have to say, it's been observed sometimes very poorly because we haven't enforced it, but it would be a very, very good idea not to permit that to happen. Salt Lake City has done it, and I don't think we should do everything that Salt Lake City wants us to do, but I think that we could take the advice of Salt Lake County, which has studied this and has made a lot of recommendations, all of which we're ignoring. As a final thing, I would say we should look at the riparian corridor overlay zoning district, which the city just enacted. And there was an article published in June, and it says, who poops where? We need to keep the dogs and the animals, that because in August, when the flow is very low, the water becomes toxic for people who go into it. Where does that come from? Thank you.
God, thank you. Make some great points. Appreciate that. And Ann, you heard his compliment to the county, and we have a county councilman right here. Julie Clausen. Come on up, Julie.
Thank you. I want to express appreciation to the Planning Commission, Mike Johnson, for revising their proposal based on resident feedback and a great amount of logic. I do agree with the concerns that Scott Clark made about Creek Road. It is not a wide road, at least, well, I don't think it's wide all the way down. What effect will an urban trail have on property owners that front Creek Road? Also, Siesta Drive, what impact will that have? And lastly, I would like to clarify if this is an addendum to the master plan, or has it been completely removed, the future trails portion? That was not lastly. Now is lastly. I wanted to just interject that I support the police department. I am grateful that they showed up in my neighborhood last week as robberies were taking place, and support an increase in pay for them.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate those comments and also the clarification on dealing with some of the other road addition that would impact. Victor Ketchum.
My name is Victor Ketchum. I reside at 24 of the first house on the left after you cross the bridge. Before it opens up into.
Can you go to the mic? Is that all right? Thank
Sorry.
you. That way the recording is better and stuff. Yeah.
Okay. It consists of two lots. Lot number 1, lot number 2, and the original Royal Lane plot plan. My house sits on lot number 2. Front yard property line is the middle of the road in front of the house. The backyard property line is down the middle of Little Cottonwood Creek. Lot number 1 is unusually shaped. My garage sits on it. It continues the property line up the middle of Cottonwood Creek for about 40 feet and then diverts across the creek for 130 feet. And I own that portion of that area. It comes back at an angle across the road in front of the bridge. Underneath the bridge, the property I own and I am taxed on. And I am grateful to hear that you're not going to try and go forward with this plan about putting a walkway down behind the fence in my backyard on property I own. I fully agree that eminent domain does not apply here. Thank you.
Well stated. Margot Richards.
I'm grateful tonight for the alternative plan. Thank you. Thank you for thinking about us. I'm also one of those people who lives at the bottom of the hill that comes down from Danish Road on Creek Road. And it is a dangerous hill. It really is. We now have 2 streets that enter intermittently on that hill. It's a traffic hazard, first of all. And secondly, anybody running or walking or bicycling down anything part of that is in danger. I watch every month, somebody comes off of that hill and has a wreck. So please think about the traffic issue on that hill. It's dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you, Margot. Tom Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor. A wise judge told me one time, when you've made your point and it's going your way, sit down and be quiet. So I will, but I want to just say a couple things. Those that know me know that I've been in this area before Cottonwood Heights came into existence. And we've enjoyed it and we appreciate it very much. But it looks like in this particular case, we got carried away, not with what the citizens of Cottonwood Heights wanted, but what some planners or map people or trail people were pushing. My wife, when she heard about this, she said, well, that's nuts. Why don't they just use the roads? And I thought, well, that's a smart idea. But, you know, I mean, the average citizen could see that that was the way to go. So we appreciate that. In sitting in the audience, I found out that almost everybody that was here had the same gripe about this. It was cutting into their privacy or their functioning. They're concerned about strangers getting around their children coming down the trails. So I think you've come up with the obvious solution to it. But I think that maybe we don't need a lot of trails in Cottonwood Heights. You know, I think there's a lot of areas that are very secluded. They want to stay secluded. They don't want people that coming and walking down, looking over their fence if they're in a hot tub or doing anything like that because they're on a trail. And I think you need to keep that in mind as you go back and you look at any further proposals for stuff like this. Maybe we don't need it. Cottonwood Heights is not Sandy. It's not Murray. It's not any of those big cities like that. We're little dinky Cottonwood Heights, but we like it here. We enjoy it here, and we appreciate the sense that came to this body this afternoon. So with that, I'll say thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate your comments. John Clausen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and city officers. Like many here and many more on Zoom, I've had concerns about the open space master plan and the parks and trails in the addendum. And along the way, we downplayed the weight of an aspirational or guiding plan in the future, but it did appear the plan had been reprioritized and received funding and had powerful partners aligned with it, which is a concern. But now, as others have said, thank you very much for your responsiveness tonight. And your website says the public and outdoor enthusiasts and biking groups were all pretty much universally enthusiastic when the plan was released. Yet a lot of us who live here in the adjacent areas, I think, just learned of this in the last week. Let me say, I do love biking. I have a mountain bike and a road bike. And I think the city's goal of creating connectivity and bike-friendly paths on roads and connectivity with neighboring towns is really a laudable and worthy objective. Great idea when it's on existing roads and it can be done safely, but crime is a great concern, and some of these plans that had ways in and out for criminals at night, I think were of great concern, as had been mentioned earlier, where I live on Forest Bend and neighboring Forest Creek. 2 times in the last 14 days, we've had the police in our neighborhood investigating burglars in the middle of the night entering occupied homes. And so it's a great concern in some of these quiet and secluded areas to bring through the access has been mentioned. And along those lines, we love the police. Who else risks their lives for us when we're truly in trouble? Pay increase would be great. And then lastly, just want to say that it sounds like the issue that we're quite concerned about, many people here and online, is going back to committee and going back to discussion. And it was noted tonight that if a willing buyer and a willing seller have a transaction, that, you know, the developer at that point, for all I know, can refer to, you know, aspirational or past or existing plans. So it seems to me as citizens, we need to be pretty vigilant about, what's happening up here in terms of plans and guiding principles that may be, on the books or addended to anything, because, transactions or things occurring in our neighborhood, even with our neighbors, can fundamentally change the character of where we live unbeknownst to us. But thank you so much for your service. Everyone appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Appreciate those comments. Steve Olson.
I applaud the changes. And just one observation. There's been comment that there's been opportunity for public input for months. Well, I think most, if not all of us are here because we found out about this a week or 10 days ago. And so my concern is what's being done to keep us informed as property owners of significant decisions that may or may not impact our properties. Posting notices in newspapers that no one reads anymore is probably not an effective way to communicate with your constituents. I own property. I get notices from municipalities in writing in the US mail that inform me of substantial discussions and concerns and changes that are being proposed that affect my properties. And I don't know why Cottonwood Heights doesn't follow that pattern of sending out notices to affected property owners about issues that will affect their property uses. So I would suggest and recommend that we have a better system of communication between city leaders and their constituents about issues that directly affect their personal property and so forth. But I do applaud the effort to respond to the recent outpour of requests to address this, and just think we may consider or ask you to consider a better way to communicate your plans to us as constituents besides just posting it on your website. And that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Good points. We appreciate that. Barbara Olson. Okay, thank you. All right, Dave Barry. Dave, where are you?
Thank you for the change of opinion, as other people have said. And thank you to all of you who have shown up in support to express your displeasure at the proposed trails as they were there. There were two parts of what's been going on this last week as I notified people. One was we didn't want the trails there across our private property. The other part, as Steve Olson in our neighborhood stated, I think the procedure to notify people directly affected with their properties has been totally deficient and to some extent subverted our input. If it's one thing to propose something that affects the whole community, an increase in salaries for the police department, whatever it may be, it's another thing to propose something that directly affects property owners and not directly notify those property owners, not to have local neighborhood meetings. I think the only reason we're having this meeting tonight is because Lee and I listened in on something and heard something. And now you have a large tide coming your way saying it's not what we wanted. But to say that there was notices back in February and March, I think that's where the deficiency occurred. And this would have been headed off at the pass a long time ago. money would not have been wasted on putting these proposed trails. And the chance that someone like my wife and I just happen to listen in and catch something, to notify everyone and change your opinion, it shouldn't be that way. It should have started, in my opinion, and I think many people's opinion in this room, it should have started with neighborhood canvassing, neighborhood notices, flyers on doors, mailings, whatever it was, to say, we are considering this. And I think that's where at least this episode broke down. And we would ask in the future, especially if this is going back to committee, we don't really have a commitment. It's coming back the way it was stated here today. We want to know if it affects our properties, if you're going to change zoning somewhere and get rid of horses in an area, the people in that area should be notified. There's a trail down a creek and it's private property. Those people need to be notified directly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. Dan Martinez. Thank you. Chad Taylor. All right, we have 3 people online. If you would allow Del Harris, if you want to go ahead. Go ahead, Del, you're on.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, great. I would like to second the comments of the most recent speaker. I am a fortunate person and a big investor in Cottonwood Heights and a big believer in the city. And I really like in general what you're doing, but I do believe the noticing was wholly inadequate. And now I was impacted on the creek, but now I'm impacted on Siesta. So that needs to continue. And all of the property owners in Sandy and in Cottonwood Heights need to know what you're contemplating, because you're affecting 2 municipalities going down Creek Road. And the obvious, solution is to punt traffic down Siesta because it's less busy. But that isn't really the solution. We don't want more traffic down Siesta. Now, do we want walkers and bike pelotons? Maybe. But if you trade traffic, so if you get rid of traffic on Siesta and on Creek Road, now maybe you're talking about something. But when I think about the overall concept of this, you're already done. I'm not sure it's worth spending any more time. The cities are already interconnected. I can go to my phone and I can pick up Google Maps, or I can pick up Apple Maps, and I can plot a biking trail, I can plot a walking trail, and I can already go from Snowbird all the way to Wheeler Park, just like that. If you have ideas, you didn't talk about eminent domain along public roads. That's a different issue than the creek. So you have to be very specific about that. You have to be, I heard fences and trails. What are you really going to do? If I go up and down Siesta, the sidewalk is on part of the street on one side and not on the other. Are you going to put sidewalks up and down? Are you going to put a fence in the middle of the road, or fence off part of the road so bikers can go there? You're already done. I'm not really sure what you're trying to accomplish. The cities are interconnected. We already have multiple paths and access points, and I can choose 2,000 different ways to get someplace. And I don't really want somebody to plot in Google Maps and say, oh, go right down Siesta, because then that will just increase the traffic up and down that road. So I think you got a lot of thinking to do, but the first question you need to answer is, why are we even spending time on this?
Thank you, Dale. Appreciate your comments. Jeremy Roberts, are you still there?
Yes, can you hear me? Sorry, I was muted.
Yes, go ahead, Jeremy. You're muted.
Yeah, I was kind of, I'm like a lot of the other neighbors and I just found out about this last night. And my first question is does Cottonwood Heights have jurisdiction over Sandy City?
We absolutely do not.
And then my next question would be, why are you guys proposing the trail when it's in Sandy City? That's the question. Because it's in Sandy City. I'm a Sandy City resident. The trail's in Sandy City. So I'm curious, I'm wondering, why is Cottonwood Heights proposing a trail in Sandy City? I talked to Sandy City today. They said trail is not happening. And so I just kind of want an answer from you guys.
Thank you for your comments, Jeremy. Those are good questions and something we will address. Allison?
Awesome. Can you hear me now?
We can, go right ahead.
Thank you. I actually have a serious concern about putting that down Siesta. I don't know if you've recognized or realized that that is the major route for kids walking to and from school, which does not take away the part of having all the strangers there. Our kids almost get hit every day as it is, trying to cross creek with a crossing guard and the lights that we had installed. People do not slow down there. And as far as, putting that thoroughfare down Siesta, that just makes more traffic for our kids to be able to walk to and from school. We in Crestwood obviously purchased our homes and our property because we like the secludedness of being in a kind of closed community. And so I think it would be far better to spend some of that money refurbishing our Crestwood pool instead of saying we're going to close it down, we're going to keep it up one more year. That's something that gets our kids out. It gets them into swim team. It gets them, doing stuff early in the morning in the summers. It gets them up. But there's no way that if we put a thoroughfare down Siesta, that will be a good option for our kids walking to school. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you for those comments. That's all of the public comments. Let me just say a couple things. As a city council, we survey our constituents a couple times a year. And always one of the highest recommended desires of the public, pretty much across the board, is to increase the amount of open space, which is both parks and trail systems, et cetera. That's no excuse, okay? Other than it's kind of fundamental in the quality of life in any community. That's why Crestwood Park is so amazing, okay? Because you got 50 acres of open space, you got an active area, you got Crestwood Park and et cetera, as well as Mount View Park and others. So our job is to try and balance that. We apologize if we have not communicated to the constituents about a very general, broad plan of trying to have connectivity between all of these amenities. It's never meant to invade your backyards, as has been made really clear. We have no right of eminent domain on your public or on your private property. And we'd never say that we're going to try and do that. Again, the plan is a living document with just the concept of connectivity. If it's a bike trail, if you see bike lines going down a road, because we have a lot of people who want to do that. If it's trying to encourage them to get to Crestwood Park, it's a safe way, but we don't want it to negatively impact those residents. Now, as far as noticing, I think that's some valid points. We need to continue to look internally as a city how we can better communicate. Now, when it comes to a change in ordinance or conditional use permits, we do send out things directly to the residents. Things like this, we put everywhere we can think of, but when it's a citywide plan, we need to find a better way to get that word out to you. We do a city newsletter.
And it was included in that, I believe, multiple times, but
It was in the state newsletter, it goes to every single residence, but we'll continue to modify, update, and find better ways to do it. Any quality organization is always looking for ways to do things better. The same with the city of Cottonwood Heights. We'll always look for ways to do things better. If it's our police, our fire, our roads. Remember snow removal? We've been through that. We'll continue to find better ways to do it. We'll take your comments tonight. We'll make these modifications. There's some added comments regarding going down Creek Road or Siesta, those things. If you drive down Big Cottonwood Canyon Road, you'll see what looks like an expanded sidewalk. That's really the trail for Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail. It's just an expanded sidewalk, which allows you to get from Holiday up to the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon. We'll always be creative and look at those ways. But I promise you, you're well heard tonight. I answered personally every email that I received saying I was sympathetic because I understand the challenges. I was involved in Jordan River Parkway 40 years ago. I'm involved in many trail developments, and they're a valuable thing to have in the community when done correctly, when the public wants it and when there's agreement on that. Here's a good example where maybe it doesn't work, so we'll modify it. And even going forward, the future council will continue to modify and make changes. But we should never do it without your public input. So appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Mayor.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to mention Troy Ripplinger that was online. He's here now. Oh, great. So I just want to make sure.
But before I do that, I want to see if anybody else on the council wants to make a comment. This is part in your district and part in your district.
That's right through mine too. It's,
It impacts all of you. And I appreciate you contacting your council members as well. Yeah. Well, just 1 minute. Doug, we'll just. Well, yeah, we're going to, let the council member, maybe from the council first, and we'll let.
one way to keep informed on items that are of general nature, like this one was, as opposed to, I mean, zoning changes, conditional uses do get mailed out to the immediate neighborhood. A general plan such as this, one way to stay up to that is the city does have an email list, a listserv that you can sign up for and receive agendas and things like that, and browse them before each meeting. That's available on our website. I haven't done it for many years, but I still get the emails. But that's one way to make sure that you're looking at the agendas and just and browsing them.
Councilor Peterson.
And this process, when we saw it, most of you that live in our area, obviously it impacts all the way from the top of Creek Road, all the way, they say it intermingles with Sandy. I'm not exactly sure why that would be in their jurisdiction.
Well, the boundary's right down the middle of
Right.
Creek Road.
But I got calls all over from Sandy to, I think, Midvale to North Salt Lake. But I did immediately when I saw this, I knew it wasn't right. And that's why I approached very quickly Mike Johnson, and thanks, Mike, because when we saw it, I knew that creek. I've walked up that creek. A lot of these decks go right up to the creek. I mean, it just didn't make sense. I think somebody initially in planning saw a creek and thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a meandering trail along the creek? But it did not make any sense. And so I tried to calm as many of you as quickly as I could. And I knew that we would take care of this. It wasn't going to zoom through and all of a sudden you'd wake up and somebody be peering over your fence. But it was disconcerting. I said, right now, what we need to do is, whether this is 100 or 150 year plan, right now, people are feeling a lot of anxiety about this. And I said, we need to curtail it. And thank goodness we got to work on it. And Mike said, you know what, this is the plan that we should do. And maybe that plan will be altered and changed, but it will not be changed back to what we saw initially here on this trail, going up the creek, coming down Brighton's Hill, behind it, a lot of homes on Cottonwood Creek, all the way through that had issues that I saw. But and maybe about Siesta, we'll look at that. We're not talking about a big thoroughfare. They might walk down the street, but I understand people not wanting increased traffic, foot traffic anywhere. I understand that. But your voices have been heard and they would be heard even if we didn't have this meeting right tonight. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Okay, we have two more people who want to make a comment. Well, maybe three. Well, okay, Doug Richards, then Troy. Well, let's go Doug first and then Troy, and then whomever else wants to speak. Then, yeah.
I'd like to just address the concern about notification real quickly. When we purchased our home, it was not in Cottonwood Heights, and we were in an A2 zone or an A1 zone. The city changed our zoning, and when we met with Mr. Toppin, we had 3 attorneys that were neighbors that were affected. The response was, we complied with the law. That was the response. So one of the attorneys that was our neighbor said, you may have complied with the law and you may have, and that may have been validated, but it was not ethical. So none of us knew that our zoning was changed. So I guess what I'm saying is the law may allow for you to put a notification in the newspaper, but people are not getting newspapers today. So that law needs to be addressed. Needs to be addressed so those people that are impacted directly do know, because we did not. And so we lost one of the benefits of our land when we purchased. It's gone. So the fact that everybody may hear, or it may be on a website or whatever, that doesn't work. So my concern or my request is that law, or whatever it is, be addressed so it's valid today in today's media, etc.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. Troy, and then Mike. Troy, my apology, we didn't get you earlier when you were online.
You're fine.
Yeah. Welcome to City Hall.
No, you're good. I appreciate that. It's always fun to stand before a live audience in front of a podium without my notes. So I'm going to be shooting from the hip here. My comments are about the budget, specifically the police budget. I want to relate it to an experience I had a couple of weeks ago. I went up to Astoria, Oregon to do some deep sea fishing. Highly recommend it for anyone who has that kind of a desire. But in speaking with the local fishermen, just talking about events, you know, the topics bounce around a bit. We got on to Portland and what had happened in Portland with all of the rioting with Black Lives Matter and all that kind of stuff last year. These fishermen don't necessarily live in Astoria. They live on the towns outside of Portland. And they're like, yeah, you're best to stay away from Portland. If you come here, you got to go up through Washington and down, you stay away from there. They said, the police have been so weakened that if there's a shooting, you know, they'll be there. But if there's an act of burglary, this is, you got a 2.5 hour wait. And they says the surrounding towns, the citizens there, along with the city officials, they're carrying right now. I don't know what their concealed weapon permit laws or regulations are up there, but they are scared that that's going to bleed into their towns and they don't want that. So that was the conversation we had up there. I bring this up because we've kind of gone through that experience here in Cottonwood Heights. And one of our city councilwomen was actually heading that up. Now, these are my personal feelings, but as I just kind of sat back and watching all this go on, there's several groups of people in the Black Lives Matter community. There's people who are genuinely, honestly good, kind people who want the best for all people. And that's to be acknowledged. But there is also an element of those people who their intent is to weaken the system of safety for our people, and that's the police force. Then that allows their mobs to kind of run rampant. We saw in Seattle when the police were so weakened that the Black Lives people were now chanting, "We're coming for your houses," because there's no one there to stop them, right? So the police is our first response for our safety as far as government is concerned. The next line of defense is the National Guard, and they're not going to come if your car is being broken into or your house. You know, so that really gives these gangs free rein. Well, our council member Tally, one of her strategies has been, well, let's just give it to unified police, you know, because it's cheaper. Well, I don't know if it's cheaper. I don't know those numbers. but they're further away, the response time would be longer. And one of her, cheap. Well, you get what you pay for, right? So does Councilmember Bruce, does she buy the cheapest clothes for herself? Does she buy drive the cheapest car, cheapest house, et cetera, et cetera? We all know, we all want a good deal, but we also know you get what you pay for. I would be inclined in the budget to be very generous with the police, give them what they need, whether it's a pay increase or whether it's equipment or whatnot. Obviously, the end all answer is that we have citizens who we have different opinions, and that's okay. But if we can love each other and be kind and civil to one another and obey the laws, we could literally turn this town into Mayberry, right? And then we got a bunch of Andy Taylors running around to the barber shop saying hi to everybody. But until we have that, let's support our police. And if there's any budget cutting in the police that comes up, let's please stay away from that. And that's my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Troy. Appreciate your comments. Mike, come on up.
I will be brief. First of all, I want to thank you all for your time and your service here. I am concerned a little bit about any plans that might increase the traffic along Siesta Drive, foot traffic or otherwise. From my observation, living on Siesta Drive, I've seen more crime on that street than I anticipated when I moved into this neighborhood about 30 years ago. I'm sure our police chief is aware of that, as are the Cottonwood Heights police. But I do have concerns. It's not unusual at all to walk down Siesta Drive and see most of the mailboxes opened and their contents removed, and then to find the contents scattered around some other place on Siesta Drive. So a few things have been said expressing appreciation to the police, and I do appreciate the police and what they do. I'm always grateful to see them in my neighborhood, and it does give me some reassurance. I'm grateful for the change in the plan of this as well. I was not eager to have people peering over looking in the hot tub that I have yet to purchase. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Come on up.
Oh, I hate doing this. Okay, my name is Pamela Brown.
Microphone down.
You think I'm short?
No.
Everybody else does.
Am I bald?
No,
Oh, yeah.
bald is beautiful. I live on Siesta Drive, and Little Conwood is in my backyard. So I'm totally happy that you guys have tabled that one, but I am extremely concerned. If you put a trail down my road, there is so many kids, and every time there is remodeling done or building done, we have crime. I mean, the police have been called to Siesta, I can't tell you how many times, because of problems. So all of a sudden, you're going to put a trail, a freeway down my road, that's going to open up for more crime. And it's a nice, quiet neighborhood. So
is there a sidewalk down there?
There is a sidewalk. But so, yeah, there is a trail, but I don't want it widened and I don't want it advertised as a trail, because that brings in all kinds of people and problems. So
no, we need to talk more about that. This goes back to my years with Salt Lake County when I was in charge of Crestwood Park, and
we love Crestwood Park.
So do I. It's a Salt Lake County regional park, and people are always going to want to come to that park. And we need to figure out with you how's the best way to allow access to the park.
And I agree with that, but I don't want fences on my road. I don't want
either.
More signs that say this is the trail, you know. And I love the cops.
No,
like
I think we need to meet with people along Siesta to get their input on that.
Well, let me tell you, they would all be up in arms,
We
to
hear
say
you.
the least.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, someone who has not spoken. Come on up.
My name is Randy Long, and I'll take my mask off. Talk. But I live on Kings Hill Drive. But I'm an avid hiker and camper. And to say that hikers are bad people, say we like to steal and stuff like that, that's wrong. That just gives hikers a very unneeded and very, very unwelcome bad rap. That's all it does. I mean, there's a few that like litter and a few like the shortcut switchbacks and stuff like that, but not very many. Like me, I enjoy switchbacks. I enjoy counting them myself and things like that. Now that, like in Draper area, now they have South Mountain, of course, but they've got many trails, and they're still making more. Now they tunnel under some of their streets, but I mean several of their streets, like Traverse Ridge Road and Highland Drive. Their streets now already become major thoroughfares, and that's something we could think of here, and I think we need to think of here. If you're going to build one trail down Little Cottonwood Creek, excuse me, you need to make a tunnel under Wasatch Boulevard and possibly even under North Little Cottonwood Road. They work somewhere out the state there. And Highland Drive. Those are major thoroughfares that need to be addressed, whatever. Tunnels are under maybe something more expensive than footbridges. I prefer tunnels under, I think. They're safer as well. But again, we need more trails back. I've been on the Big Cottonwood Trail 3 or 4 times now, and I really enjoy it. Even where it is going, there's a sidewalk along Big Cottonwood Road, along 30th East, whatever. I really enjoy that. So again, we need more trails badly. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. We agree we need more, but need it done appropriately in the right location. All right.
Hello, my name's Ron Roberts. Can you hear me? I live in Royal Lane subdivision. I'd like to pivot and reiterate what Margaret Richards said about how unsafe I believe Creek Road is from Danish down to the creek there. It's very steep. But yet I seldom see a police officer sitting there. But yet the police will park down by Highland Drive, which is probably the safest part of Creek Road. And seldom would there be a safety concern other than to grab people and give them tickets. But definitely, it's unsafe coming off that slope. And there's a lot of drivers that come down there pretty quickly. And I would just reiterate trying to upgrade the ways you may see to improve the safety on that stretch. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hi, thank you. I would really like to thank you, Mayor, and Mike Johnson. Thank you for hearing the people and what they have to say. I would also like to say thank you to Robbie. And I was a part of what happened last year and the BLM coming and trying to enforce mob rule, and Lex Scott, which thank goodness she's moved out of Utah. And that's not really so much a problem with her anymore. I think that we should definitely look into increasing salaries of the police officers. They do such a great job. Unfortunately, Salt Lake didn't give them the help that they asked for when they knew that large mob was moving outside. I think the police officers did a very good job of reacting in that that sort of situation. I'm part of this organization called UtahPatriots.com, and we mobilize to help officers, and also UCA, Utah Citizens Alarm, in assisting police officers and making sure that nothing gets damaged. And I think that it's very important to retain the good officers that we do have here in Cottonwood Heights. I know that if it was a year ago or two where we were short on officers and they cut funding, but I think that it's very important, and thank you so much for everything. that you
All right, thank you for your comment. Now, anyone else who wants to speak towards the open space plan? Yeah, with the other public comments, none other than Troy, yeah. Good luck catching him. Anyone else like to comment on the open space? Hearing none, we will close the public comment period regarding the open space master plan. And again, reiterate, we'll take note of what is said tonight, add that to our analysis and our position, be modifying the plan. It'll come back to us after going to our PTOS committee and informing our planning commission. But I am concerned about Siesta Drive. I've traveled it many times, so we'll be talking about that further. Thank you, everyone. We now have 3 action items on our agenda. Excuse me. The first is ordinance 368 enacting and codifying code chapter 19.75 accessory dwelling units. Dave, if you're still here, you want to hear this, but Mike, I'll let you introduce it.
Thanks again, Mayor. Would you like me to give a full overview or just answer questions?
Just real quickly.
in
We went
one-
through- we went
yeah,
through
one
pub- we
long
went through
sentence.
Public comment, maybe emphasize the state mandate.
Yeah, so in the previous legislative session back in January, February, the state enacted a law that allows internal accessory dwelling units, so basement apartments or other rental units within the footprint of a primary home as permitted uses in single-family zones throughout the state of Utah. That ordinance or that legislation is effective October 1st, just a couple weeks from now. And that ordinance or the legislation also limited cities' ability to strictly regulate ADUs locally. So we can regulate a few things like require owner occupancy, ensure that ADUs are long-term rentals only, require 1 additional parking stall, require licenses and permits to be obtained and egress windows to be upgraded and that kind of thing. But beyond that, we cannot prohibit them or regulate them really much more strictly than that. So we've drafted an ordinance that we feel regulates internal ADUs to the maximum extent possible locally. It does all the things that we're allowed to do. The 1 additional parking stall is proposed in your legislation tonight as having to be non-tandem, which means not in front of or behind one of the stalls needed for the home. And then our ordinance does allow, through a pretty rigorous process, a detached accessory dwelling units, but those are subject to city standards. We can regulate those to our choosing. So those go through a pretty strict public hearing, planning commission, conditional use permit. We don't anticipate a ton of those. But the ordinance is in front of you tonight. It hasn't changed since it's been to planning commission. Again, received a favorable recommendation there, came to council. We held public comment last time. And again, we're very limited in what we can do locally. This isn't a requirement for people. This is an option for people to utilize if they are so interested. Any other questions?
Any questions from the council?
There's been a lot of comments to me about this, and I think everything that we can do, we're doing. The state, of course, mandates things that I'm surprised they're allowed to. But there's been a lot of issues with this, and I think this will clean up a lot of it. I guess enforcement is one of my questions that has been given to me by many people. Is that something, the licensing, those different things like that need to be done if someone is out of compliance and trying to slip by? I'm not exactly sure the procedure or the process there.
Yeah, absolutely. If it were brought up to the city or a complaint was submitted to code enforcement that there was an ADU that didn't have a license or was being rented illegally, we could then use this ordinance to enforce that and say you need to go get a permit and go through this process.
So there would be some kind of identifying the problem from the area, and that's usually something that could be done quite easily, I guess. I like it.
Any other further comments? Just one for me personally, as this became before the council, it's been a year or two ago, and my problem with this ordinance before we were mandated by the state was parking, because most ordinances across the valley allow you to park in tandem in the driveway. Well, what happens when the landlord lives in the same house? He's going to tell the tenant, get your car out of the driveway and park on the road. So our ordinance is a little bit unique than most of them, if I understand it correctly. We will require a third parking stall, cannot be in tandem. It cannot be in the garage or the normal parking of the resident. I think that's a valuable piece of the ordinance that we've developed. So I appreciate that addition and correction from our previous ordinance. Okay, any further comments? Again, apologize for my voice. Well, we'll talk to you right after, but no. Entertain a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance 360.
It's been moved by Councilmember Bracken,
And I'll second that, Mayor.
seconded by Councilmember Peterson. Any further comments, discussion? I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Michael,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Okay, the next item is Resolution 2021-46, approving appointment to the Arts Council. Tim?
Yeah, we are recommending Penny Broussard to be on the Arts Council. Paula Melger and Ann Etchell and myself had a chance to meet Penny, talk about her background. She has an amazing background, especially in dance. And we're excited that she has an interest in being a part of this committee, and we think that she'll do a great job. And so I'm recommending approval of this appointment of Penny Broussard.
Any comments, questions?
I've also met Penny. She was at our last meeting, very qualified, a lot of experience, and she's going to be a great asset to the group. And I move that we approve.
All right, it's been moved by Councilor Peterson. Do I have a second?
Second.
And seconded by Councilor Bracken. Any further comments, discussion? Here, I'll call for the vote. Councilor Michael,
Yes.
Councilor Bracken,
Yes.
Councilor Peterson,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Okay, we have one more action item, and that is Resolution 2021-47, approving entry into a funding agreement with Central Utah Water Conservancy District. Mike Johnson, you want to introduce that quickly?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This is a grant from Central Utah Water Conservancy District that will be applied towards water-wise landscaping at the new Ferguson Park project, up to $45,000, as long as we use the maximum square footage possible of this water-wise seed mix for the ground cover.
Appreciate staff working and finding those outside monies. We don't have to use taxes locally. Any questions, comments regarding this resolution? Hear none, I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we approve this resolution. Mayor.
Moved by Councilor Peterson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Bracken. Any further comments? I'll call for the vote. Councilor Peterson,
Yes.
Councilor Bracken,
Yes.
Councilor Michael,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. That's all of our business items other than approval of the consent calendar for September 7th, 2021. Entertain a motion to approve those work session and business meeting minutes.
We approved those minutes. There was a couple of changes. The last one that came through, I think from Paul, was probably the best representation.
Okay, the last representation. So it's been moved by Councilmember Bracken. Do I have a second?
I second that, Mayor.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show unanimous. I'll call this meeting adjourned and we will reconvene in our work session in